Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Holiday Movie Marathon Show. My name is Ben Barber. I am your host. I'm excited to be joined today by my good friend, Jason Stevenson. Jay, how are you, my friend?
Awesome, my friend. Always. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Today we are discussing a film, a classic 80s Christmas movie that that you recommended to me. So I said, sure, I'll watch it. I tried to watch this movie. So we're talking about Scrooged with Bill Murray, and I tried to watch this movie maybe about 7 years ago, and I didn't remember it. I remembered that it was on, and I didn't remember much about it. I don't know like if I paid attention to it then or what happened. So I was like, definitely, let's give it a go. Before we get into it, why do you love Scrooged?
Great question. I'll tell you the truth. The holiday movies tend to have, like, for me, they kind of go two different directions, right? Like they're either like It's a Wonderful Life and holiday traditional, or they're like comedies, right? So
Yep.
for me, Scrooge kind of bridges the gap. You've got a great comedic cast. The list of people that are in that movie that have been comedians and that have been making movies for decades is amazing. And there's all these mini cameos that a lot of people don't pick up on. And I really appreciate and respect that, because growing up, my dad taught us to appreciate great flicks.
Yep.
And so for me, the great cast. And Bill Murray has always been one of my favorite actors, and he does a great job of being over the top and comedic, but also really brings some heart to the Christmas story. This is obviously a revisit to the traditional Scrooge story, the Christmas past and the Christmas future, and somebody learns that they're not a nice person, and they learn the error of their ways.
Yes. By the way, there will be spoilers on all of these episodes. They're just,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
He doesn't die, folks, like.
but so this is one of the earliest movies that I've ever seen that would be really considered meta. Like, it's so self-referential. The fact that he's producing a television special of Scrooge, and and I particularly love, so one moment that I thought was really great was when he freaks out in the elevator when he sees the Ghost of Christmas Future, or the Ghost of Christmas Is Yet to Come, whichever you prefer. And he freaks out and everybody sees it, and they're like, that's the guy playing it on the show, man. Oh, sorry. That was great. I was not, so I didn't love it.
So have you watched it all the way through?
I watched it all. I watched it last night. I watched it all the way through. I didn't love it. I didn't think that it was bad. I love Bill Murray. I love some of the performances in it. It's very 80s.
Oh, for sure.
I feel like if I saw it as a kid, I'd be super nostalgic for it.
Yeah.
But it didn't. And Bill Murray's amazing at everything that he does. So,
yes.
Like, fantastic. But yeah, it was a great cast. There were a lot of fun bits in it. It didn't like, I don't know. I did love the meta aspect of it, and I also thought that having it be a TV producer was a perfect thing for the time. As a retelling of that. His he does some truly, he might be a worse person than Scrooge.
Yes.
In the beginning of that movie. So first of all, and also I think that he's terrible at his job, which should be self-evident, but that commercial that he makes for the classic retelling of the Christmas story, with the exception of the fact that Tiny Tim is a gymnast, which is stupid,
His
and funny but stupid.
other cameo, Mary Lou Retton.
Yep. Is that that commercial is like apocalyptic, and which I get is the joke. I get that that's the joke. I didn't think that it was that funny. I did think that it was hilarious when it killed an old woman. And then he's like, "This is great. You can't buy this publicity." Fantastic. Such a bad guy thing to do, but almost irredeemable.
Yeah, I don't think that the story of Scrooge is designed for us to believe in the good of the outcome, right? Like that like we're not supposed to be like, oh well, now he's a nice guy. Like just because truthfully, I don't think that anybody is redeemable necessarily from all of their travesties. It's just who we are, and hopefully, on the grand scheme of things, our choices are better, right? But I always felt like the message that he ends up conveying, like what he gets, like that last speech at the end, how he apologizes to his brother on television, his girlfriend that he has failed so many times, and he's still in love with her, and she comes back and she loves him and she sees him for who he really is, and not this person that has been bastardized by the commercialism and the money side, because the story of Scrooge is somebody that just focuses on money.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that's what they're trying to depict with all of that the almost the satirical version of this character.
It is.
Now,
it's so satirical.
Yeah.
He's such a cartoonishly bad. I mean, I'm aware that in A Christmas Carol, the people come in from like the orphanage and ask for a donation, and he says, well, like, then they should go die then. But saying that, which is terrible, and tricking an old woman into looking the other way so that you can steal her cab, and then once you get in the cab, flipping her off as you drive away, is like harsh. Harsh.
I think your takeaway from it is focused on some of the parts that were the bad parts. Like think about the transition, right? Like that's the point, isn't it? That you can understand the mistakes that you made. You can look at your life, like I said in a previous podcast, like own your choices, right? Like own the things that have made you who you are. But so remember that, like, one of the first fairy
I love how
woman.
in-depth you're going with this movie.
Well, you ask me questions, I'll be serious. But like, remember when the fairy chick flies across the stage and she slaps him and he's like, "What are you doing?" And she's like beating the crap out of him. And she says, "The truth is painful. The truth is painful." And I think that we don't take much time to realize the bad things that we've done, the impact that we've had on people, the things that we've done for the search for power and success and acceptance in this world. Oftentimes that person that you left standing on the sidewalk because you stole the cab, we don't see that, right? Whoever gets in the cab and takes off doesn't look back at that and realize what impact they've had on that person. When he realizes that the choice that he made, that guy dies, right? Like, that's to see the impact of that is something that I think we need to see. We need to understand that the world isn't sunshine and roses all the time, and there's really crappy things that happen all the time, but that we can still be a shining light. We can still make a difference. And that's the piece. Like, I think, dude, I tear up through that whole end of that movie speech. Like, there's a couple of moments in there when the little kid talks for the first time in years. Are you kidding me? And he befriends this monster. Like, this little kid who has had an awful experience in his life. And here's this man that is an awful monster, could care less about anybody else in the world. And here he has changed his tune a little bit. And this little kid is like, "Hey, buddy, you forgot the best part. Like, and God bless us all, don't forget the little people."
Yes. I did love Tiny Tim, whatever his name is in the movie. I thought that was fantastic. There are so many great. John Forsythe is amazing. John Glover,
Oh, you pulling up the cast? Yeah.
fantastic. Uh, David Johansen, the cab driver, the ghost of Christmas, is
Amazing.
it's very funny to me because Carol Kane looks more like the ghost of Christmas Past.
Yeah, but she's great at her role, though.
She's fantastic
She's
as a Christmas present.
amazing because
Yeah.
she's so like delicate and little and everything, but she's so aggressive and she grits her teeth at him, and then she talks in a sweet little voice.
I mean, yeah. So I would like Robert Goulet as Robert Goulet, Buddy Hackett as Scrooge. Fantastic.
Yeah. Lee Majors. I mean,
Yep.
Robert Mitchum. I mean, you got like the who's who of old Hollywood in this, which I think is a piece for me too. You know, that's what I mean. Like it bridges the gap. Like we look at 80s movies, and like you said, it looks so 80s because movies have changed so much. I mean, that there is not one CGI effect in that movie. Right? Like that's all a stop action, and that's all like lights and mirrors, and that's a typical 80s movie, and we can tell, but I feel like it still stands the test of time because you don't need any of that glossy stuff that you can tell the difference in the movies. You know, stuff is so, it's almost like polished at this point that you can barely tell the difference between reality and CGI.
Right. I mean, some of the things were incredible though, like the entire scene with Jacob Marley at the beginning when he's got him in the chokehold and he's putting him outside the
hanging off the building.
Yeah, that looked incredible. By the way, the most disgusting Jacob Marley I've ever seen, and I get that was the point. The rat and the golf ball coming out of the back of his head and going back in, like.
So that's pieces that make this so good. I look at stuff in movies like that, especially movies you've seen for years, right? Like those little pieces. It is disgusting, but it's a layer to the movie. It's thoughtful.
You know what I've known for a while about myself, but just confirmed because I watched 2 movies last night and or during the course of the day. And the first one I have seen before, so I was like doing some other stuff while I was watching it. But and I won't say that during the show where I talk about that. But it was another 80s Christmas movie that's very famous, and I don't want to get into it right now. But it was another 80s Christmas movie, and I was like, I don't like physical comedy for the sake of physical comedy. I really don't.
Style.
And there's not a ton of it in Scrooged, actually. Like it's more cerebral. And it's just, and that was the humor of the time. And but I tell you what, when physical comedy doesn't feel like in place, have you ever seen the Neighbors movies?
Oh yeah,
with Seth Rogen.
Yeah.
When they do the airbag bit, I'm literally like, I don't like this movie anymore. This movie was so realistic.
Yeah.
And whatever. And then like the minute that happens, I'm like, nope, no thanks. Why am I seeing now all of a sudden I'm seeing someone cartoonishly be shot from their seat up into the ceiling. Yeah. And we're going to do that like 4 times. And then it's going to be back for the second movie, which I never bothered to see. But yeah, so I don't love, that's going to be a theme probably of these Christmas movies is like, I love story and I don't love like dad fell off the roof.
Yeah.
It makes me uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable to watch, like to watch that stuff. Like
the story, The Christmas with the Cranks.
Yeah.
You know, it's a John Grisham story. Actually, it's a short story that he wrote. And I feel like they really screwed it up by putting Tim Allen in there because it's a great story. It really is. And it should be a short story. It shouldn't really be a movie, but it's
a John Grisham.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the story itself, it gets kind of carried away with all that kind of like antics and that cartoonish stuff. That's one of the reasons I like Scrooge, because I don't feel like any of it is too over the top in that sense, right? Like there's some gags, there's some funny stuff. You know, there's some also intense scenes.
Like these things are really happening in real life and affecting other people, which is the interesting thing. Like he was clearly not dreaming. The which makes it very surreal. The he First of all, like, he sees all of the ghosts, including Jacob Marley, at the end,
Mhm.
watching the show, and the cab driver to get the Ghost of Christmas Past is the cab driver again for the girlfriend at the end
Yeah.
when she's like, "Get me to the IBC building." He's like, "What floor?"
Yeah.
Like, by the way, creepiest looking man ever. Ghost of Christmas Past. I did love the bit in the beginning where he goes through the door and then Bill Murray just tries to go through the door because he's like,
Yeah.
he's, accepting that
Not a
it's a
ghost.
yeah. Uh, Also, it's not live. Think of it like a rerun. That was a great line. There was a lot of good, and I wish that I could hate on it, but I can't because I know that it's a classic, and I love Bill Murray too much, and there were a lot of good things about it. And hearing your nostalgia for it just makes me like the movie more,
Aw.
which is why it was so, you know, um, will I put it in my yearly Christmas rotation? No. Um, will I be happy to watch it with somebody who would want to watch it in the future?
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, and I'm glad that I saw it, and thank you for the recommendation. When was the first time you saw the movie?
That's a great question. I can't remember, frankly. Probably like middle school or high school. My parents were pretty careful about the kind of stuff that we watched.
Yeah.
Like music and that kind of violence stuff. So when we were like that
Egg.
PG-13, yep, that like PG-13 genre of movies, I was ready for it. So I'd say like middle school, high school, probably.
Yeah.
Because I would have been probably a little young to watch it when it first came out.
Yep.
And I don't remember. I don't think neither one of my parents were like big Bill Murray fans. It wasn't like we were watching Caddyshack every weekend. My dad we used to call it great flicks. He always loved movies that had like good actors and storytelling in it, not just cinematography stuff.
Yeah.
But we definitely watched movies as a family. So it had to be when I was middle school or high school.
I think that I have a now that you said that, it reminds me of something, which is what I get a feeling immediately with movies like Scrooged that are so 80s, and specifically like the cab driver, like the look of the cab driver, like the makeup and the teeth and everything.
Oh yeah.
There was an aspect to special effects in the 80s, practical effects in a certain genre of popular movies, that as a child, when I was probably too young in the very early 90s, I would go over my cousins' houses and they would like force me to watch movies like this and like Gremlins and Chucky and all of those 80s movies. And I mean, not all of them were horror movies. This wasn't a horror movie, though it has aspects.
Right.
And like when I see the look of that late 80s special effects makeup and like, it automatically drops. It is a bias that is like ingrained in me in my core memories from childhood of like, this movie makes me uncomfortable. And it's from being a little boy and watching them.
Well,
if that makes sense.
It does. Of course, we attach emotions to all kinds of experiences, smells and things like that. So
Yeah.
especially the first times you saw stuff, that's indelible.
When's the last time you watched Scrooge?
Last year, definitely last year during the holidays.
Will you be watching it this year?
For sure. I was saying that the other day. We kind of were remiss last year. I don't know how we got through the holidays and didn't watch a bunch of normal holidays. Like usually watch, It's a Wonderful Life, Christmas Carol, definitely Elf. There's some like when we're wrapping gifts or when we're decorating, we'll just throw stuff on because, like you said, there's some movies that we've seen so many times, you don't have to really sit down and pay attention to it.
Yep.
But
it's nice. It's nice to have them on.
Yeah.
We have for a long time put on the Rankin Bass specials in the morning, like as we open gifts and stuff.
Yeah.
On Christmas, because I love, and we'll get to those movies in this movie marathon. We will get to the Rankin Bass specials. But sometimes, and I know that this is blasphemy, sometimes you put on like Rudolph and you're like, this is going to be amazing. I love Rudolph so much. I love it. I really miss just watching it on CBS and like trying to find the time to do it and whatever. Then you set out 30 minutes to do it and you put it on, and 10 minutes in, you're like, this is slower than I remember.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it's all subjective, right? Like I know that there's
yeah,
like I love Elf, and Kirst doesn't love it as much as I do. You know, there's definitely movies. She's not a big fan of Scrooged either. She doesn't think it's as funny as I do. And she's a tough one. The difference is like I start tearing up during Scrooged, and the first time we watched it together, I was like bawling by the end of that speech. And she's looking at me like I'm a lunatic. She's like, "What is wrong with you?" And then we watched The Grinch, and she starts bawling when they all start dancing around the tree at the end and the Christmas spirit. And I look at her, and she's literally, this is the first time I've ever seen her cry in a movie, and she's crying over the Grinch dancing around the Christmas tree. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? But that's the beauty of it, right? Like everybody has emotional connections to things that mostly have experiences in their childhood, you know, that brings us that Christmas spirit, that emotional, like feel good stuff.
absolutely.
And that's why we love them, right?
Absolutely. It's all about the memories that you have surrounding it. Like it's a little bit of everything, you know?
Yeah, man.
Speaking of memories, I want to take a second to thank our sponsor, who, you know, is me. FamilyStoryAlbums.com. The perfect gift for a family member, a mom, a dad, a grandma, a grandpa, an aunt, an uncle. Save your family memories forever. The stories that you never got to ask, the stories that you never thought to ask, the memories. We all have photo albums, and this is your opportunity to get actual recordings of your loved ones telling the stories about how they met, and how you came to be, and what they did in their childhood and their traditions and all of those things. I love family story albums. It's one of my favorite things that we offer every year. And so please check that out, FamilyStoryAlbums.com. And it's a wonderful Christmas present. And Jay, I know that we need to get you and your lovely wife on there as well.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Jay. It was a
course.
pleasure. It was a pleasure talking about this movie with you, and I will see you
course.
soon. Jay is also a personal trainer, fitness coach with a wonderful podcast called Your Time to Thrive. Check that out wherever you find podcasts. And you can check out more info about Jay at thrivetrainingteam.com. And his podcast is also live every Wednesday at 11-ish on Facebook, on the Thrive Training Team Facebook page. Jay, thank you so much, man.
Thank you, buddy. Love you, man. We'll talk
Love
soon.
you too. Talk to you soon. Bye.
There are so many stories we've never told, questions we never thought to ask. Preserve your family memories for generations to come.